from Matt Ray's absence. He's actually on his way to the United States right now, which, funny enough, is actually going to make it more complicated to record with him, which seems counterintuitive, but nonetheless, it is what it is. So we look forward to Matt Ray's return here. Maybe next
Well,
week, maybe the week after.
you
We
know,
don't know.
week after next, Brandon, I am going to
Uh-huh.
be in New York City,
New York, New
literal,
York.
for our spring one tour, and I'm going
Oh,
to be there
all
for
right.
quite some
So it's going to
time.
make it harder to record with you, probably too. Is that going to, or is it be
Maybe,
easier? Maybe.
yeah, we should
Do you have
figure it
booth
out.
duty? That's the question.
Oh no, we don't have booths. However,
So it's
I
just
don't
like so
know.
you're gonna you have well known like slots where you'll have to be doing something, but you don't have these
Here's the
long
problem.
like. Could I
Here's the
leave from
problem.
booth duty? Uh huh.
I'm flying home Thursday night, so
Oof.
that
Okay.
will be the issue. And
All right.
due to corporate
Wi-Fi on
optimism,
Lufthansa, not Lufthansa. You're a KLM person.
KLM, yeah,
Not as not that strong, huh?
yeah, and due to corporate optimizations, I can no longer fly business class. So I will I will be I
Back
got a
in the
good
cattle
yeah I got a good seat though. You know,
cattle car.
it took me a long time because I
Exit
don't
row.
really. Yeah, I think I got an exit row. Now, as Seat Guru likes to say, proximity to the lavatories may be troublesome or bothersome. I think is what they say.
Yeah,
But
it's
I don't
kind
think
of
that's
like
the case. What's really troublesome about those seats is often that if they have an entertainment system, they build it into the arms, and so your ass gets compacted.
okay.
Right. That's what that was on the American flights at least, and I never liked that. So I stopped choosing those seats because I need some expansion area, and it's not so bad. But we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, good. All right. So Matt Ray for the streamers. Matt Ray will hopefully be back next, or maybe it'll just be me and Matt then while you're on your way back. Although I was just thinking, as you're talking there, it's 6 hours New York to Amsterdam, 5.5.
Yeah,
Not actually that long, right? I mean,
it's definitely not 5.5. That's only when you're talking like to Utah.
Concord action.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe it's wrong. I don't know. I'm gonna say, look, I don't think it's that long. I think it's under 6. I'm gonna say 6 hours. Am I like?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
maybe that's wishful
Oh
thinking.
no! What I was saying is it's round. There's only a few time zones where you've got the 30-minute thing.
Oh,
Somewhere,
yeah.
somewhere in Asia and Southeast Asia, there's like a 30-minute.
Well, I'm just talking flying time. Just flying time. Like
Oh,
like
yeah,
how
yeah.
how long will it fly? Is
Oh
6 hours?
no! It's like an 8 or 10 hour flight. It doesn't make any sense, but
Really?
It's
Hold on.
yeah.
Hold on. I need to. let's take a moment. Flying.
No,
I feel like I want to say it's much. I guess geography, not so good. 8 hours, 5 minutes, off by 2.5.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
All right. Well,
okay.
completely wrong. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it's London.
You know
I
what
just
it
feel
is?
like when the investment bankers are like, "Oh, I can fly from New York to London in like I don't know, 10 minutes."
Yeah,
And you're like, "Oh,
yeah.
guys, New
Well,
York and London, they are close."
Also, I forget which direction, but one way it's actually much faster than the other way. One
Oh,
way
the
it takes
winds?
longer. Yeah, headwinds, Brandon. You got the
Headwinds.
headwinds, you got the tailwinds.
Headwinds.
Yeah, what they have when you go one direction, what you have is the secular headwinds, and that really slows you down.
The secular headwinds, is that right? Is that actually true? Is it
I
secular?
don't know. That's some sort of like market stuff that I
Regional.
was
I'm
saying.
gonna say regional. I don't know. It's secular? Are they by sectors?
No. If you're talking about like Wall Street conditions, things are always secular and they're always headwinds. So like after it's just like after the Fed meeting this week, what you're really experiencing are some
Secular
sort of
headwinds.
secular. You've
You
got
can always say
secular winds.
that. Yeah, that's true. That's a good.
I don't know. I don't know if the winds are tailwinds or headwinds or midwinds, but they are secular winds. And
All right.
that's what we're facing here.
Let me put in the channel. No, it's here. Here's what I'm supposed to use, not channel. All right. That's not right. I gotta put in the streaming thing. Oh, you think I'd get all these links just bookmarked and have them perfectly, but no, not yet.
No, it's a mess.
Always, it's always new to me.
That's what keeps it fresh and interesting.
Okay. Also, we're gonna try to improve. There's some little audio hiccups last time, so we're gonna see if we can make it better.
That's my fault because I'm
I
not
don't-
hardwired.
Show that's behind the scenes in software defined talk. The quest to get everyone to plug in Ethernet cables. It's not always easy. Not everyone wants to do it. Actually, no one wants to do it. I think I have like a disproportionate I don't know, desire. I really like when I can get an Ethernet connection. I love it.
Hold on. I have been hardwire broadcasting for 3.5 years, ever since I've been here, Brandon. And
no, you have like you 100% have. I mean it more like I like I like plugging it. I like it's the act of like wiring up and getting an Ethernet connection. I feel like
All
I've
right, I see what you're
accomplished
saying.
something. It's like important to me, right? And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
always
yeah.
like, yes, good. But I think other people like this is just this is annoying. Like, did we really
Oh,
like? I don't know. I'm trying to think what would be the equivalent of it's like, I don't know, folding clothes or something. Like, did you like some people like to fold the clothes perfectly, and I'm like, I don't really care. I'm just like, as long as it's like good enough. That's kind of like Wi-Fi. It's like Wi-Fi most of the time good enough, but like for me, it's like no, no, no. The Ethernet is so much better. It's just,
yeah.
it's like no.
I have two analogies in mind. One, do you insist on a clean stovetop, like sparkling
Mm,
clean, or not? Right now,
I don't. I can't say I do.
I'm gonna reveal a secret. I don't. Like
I
I'll
don't.
clean it.
Yeah, I
I'll
don't
clean
on
it
that.
like once, maybe twice a week. But it's just sort of like it's like to have another thing. It's kind of like the making your bed thing, right? Like
Yeah.
the first 10 to 20 years of your life. The totally valid objection to making your bed is like it's just going to get unmade in
Yep.
less than
Been there.
24
Been there.
hours,
Yep.
right? And then the other thing is, you'll have a door or several doors in your house where to unlock your front door, if you have to
Uh huh.
unlock your front door and you've got to go through some sort of routine to actually unlock it, right? You're like, oh, you got to lift the handle up and then turn it,
Right.
right? I think
Yeah.
that's another example where it's like there are some people who would just immediately replace the lock or even just spray some
Yeah.
WD-40 in it.
True.
Whereas like
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who would be like, oh no, you just got to lift it up and turn it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Like,
true. No, it's true. Like I agree. Like I think making the bed's an example. Like I really like it's important to me. I was helping some set up a home network, and it was like it was important to like when we could wire things via Ethernet. It was important to me that we get it done. The people that I was working helping out, they don't really care, right? Unless something doesn't work, no one cares. If everyone's like, "This is a really strong Wi-Fi signal," but then I plug in the Ethernet, I'm like, "Oh, now we're getting the full Ethernet, like 1 gig
yeah.
connection." Like nobody cares, but I'm like, it's important to me. It's like it is. It's like creasing the bed. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's internet hygiene.
that's right.
It's
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Internet hygiene. All right, we can. Now we're ready. I think so.
all right. Let's see. What was I going to talk about?
Obeying the table. That's my other. That's
Oh,
my
I'm
other.
sorry. I'm sorry.
That's my other
Yes,
comment.
yes, yes. Okay. Let me. I gotta.
Brian's listening.
Yes. All right. All right. I got it. We'll see if this is anything. We can wrap it up. If not. Well, I was in just earlier today, Brandon. I was in not only Luxembourg, but Luxembourg City. Or only because I watched The Patriot a lot and I heard people actually say it as they say Luxembourg. Luxembourg, to go back to the American way of saying it, is just, if you're not familiar with it, it's this kind of unexpected country, right? Like, you've heard about it and you go there. And first of all, you know, one should know this, but I think as an American, until you know it, it doesn't really like pop in your head. Is they speak French there, right? Like if you
Oh,
sort of
okay, yeah.
like exactly right now, if you even look now, listen, as everyone knows, I'm just revealing my naivete to use, I think, a French word and everything. But if you look at the Luxembourg flag and you were to look at the Netherlands flag, you would kind of be like, I think maybe you need more toner in your printer for one of these flags. Like they're very similar and almost the same. And
Right.
so like, however, you go there and like, I took a, I would say by American standards, a fair amount of French in high school, right? So like, as I joked with several people, like, I think very stupidly on my part, my French is probably better than my Dutch. Like, even though I very rarely ever speak French. So it is kind of like, it's fun to go to a French speaking country and hear French because I can kind of understand what people are talking about. Like the people were asking us what we wanted for lunch, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll come over to you and like tell you it in English." But I was like, "No, no, I got it. Like we got some beef, and we're gonna have like a salmon salad, and then for dessert we got this." So it's kind of nice to have like, oh, I kind of get what's going on here. Now, of course, like I have no confidence in my ability to pronounce French. So I can't even like I try not to even say like thank you and I guess I can say bonjour and things like that. But the real pivot point to your confidence, as I think I mentioned before, in speaking French in Europe is if you say oui or ouais or what however they pronounce it, right? There's some like I think that's kind of a tell of like how native you are in your French speaking is how you say yes. Because in America you're taught to say oui, right? But like I have never heard any French speaking person say it that way. They always say like, and I'm gonna butcher it, but they're always like ouais or whatever.
Now, is that
I
an
mean,
accent or is it actually a different pronunciation?
well,
That's like a that's the part I don't understand sometimes. So that's really hard when you're studying languages in the United States. It's like sometimes they're just telling you your accent is wrong, which is like,
totally.
yeah, it is wrong, but it's real hard to change that. But then sometimes it's like, no, they're just teaching you, like, to your
Right,
point,
right,
like
right.
a completely wrong pronunciation. And you're like, well, thanks a
And
lot. That was not
and
helpful.
and
Right?
this is my point, Brandon. I have no idea. I don't know,
Mm.
like now on the other hand, like it does make me think if I was really gonna like study French, I would want a Cajun person to teach me, because wouldn't that be the best? That if like you were fluent in French but you had like a Louisiana Cajun
Oh
accent,
my
that would be
gosh.
amazing, right? Anyways, or
No
even
one can understand you on either continent. It's like, what are you
yeah,
saying? What are you talking about?
or even as we would say, a Quebec accent or a
Oh,
Quebecois,
jeez.
like that would
Yeah,
also be fun. But whatever. So that's not
that's
what
funny.
I wanted to talk about. So I was in Luxembourg City, right? And there are no Marriotts in Luxembourg, as far as I can tell. So I had to stay, not had to, I got to stay in a oh, what's the name of the hotel chain? Not Allure. It's the big Accor. I stayed in an Accor one, which is my secondary choice for hotel chains, and I stayed in a Novotel. Now, what I learned, I think, is that the Novotel is the Courtyard Suites of the Accor hotels. You want to stay in the
Okay.
Sofitel. Like, it
Okay.
gets very
Yeah.
complicated,
Yep.
but the part of Luxembourg City that I was in, there's a lot of new construction. It's right next to a big convention center, a lot of new office buildings. And I was in a Novotel. Now, a Novotel inside, if you can imagine at least the one that I was in, if you imagine what is the Marriott, there's no more motels, but the motel version of the W, a loft.
A
It's
loft.
kind
Yep.
of like kind of like an aloft, but not hipstery, right? So
Okay.
it has like the very flat carpet. It looks nice and fresh, but the functional room, there's no in-room coffee. Very
Oh.
important to remember,
Oh.
right?
Uh-huh.
But anyways, so I was looking at the hotel style, the buildings around me, and it's I don't really know what I had to say about this, but there is some design aesthetic that is sort of like continental business European, not luxury. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this, right? So like you go to Europe, right? And you're not in like the old part of Europe that wasn't completely destroyed in World War II, right? So like, you know, you like if you're in the inner rings of Amsterdam, right, the canals, which is still preserved, like clearly that is its own thing, like old style stuff, right? Or if you go to London, right, like you're in London, it has its own like distinct like gritty London style. But
Right.
there are some parts of Europe that you go to, often in the suburbs of the city, that are like this brand new, very like sharp, clean and crisp sort of construction.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like maybe in the States you encounter that only in like maybe in a loft hotel. Like the
Yeah. I mean, like
cleanness,
more
the sharp,
modern, kind of straight
yeah,
edges,
yeah.
polished,
And
curves. Yeah. Uh huh.
and then the buildings around you are, you know, I don't know, you would have more thoughts on this than I do, but like I think in Austin, you have all these new buildings that are like, they're not even this extreme, but they're kind of like glass and crisp. But there's another style of building that you encounter a lot that looks like, you remember like the cheese grater Mac, like the Macs that are kind of like
Yeah.
metal with holes cut in
course.
them. It's almost like buildings like that. Like it's almost like Apple design style from like 8 to 10 years ago. And I feel like this is a very distinct. It's almost like, let's call it like early 21st century European business style. and you know, I don't know how to describe it, but I see it frequently. Like and I don't know. I mean, have you encountered this, Brandon? Do you have this sense of it?
I think I know what you're talking about a little bit. I just think, maybe the way to think of it is, in this case, look through an American lens. Like often styles that seem like more kind of you're describing there. Like I think Americans, we would just lump it all together and be like, oh, that's European, right? Not realizing that, well, all of
Yes.
Europe, there's lots of different countries and like everything kind of has its own style. And, as we all know, Barcelona is very different than London and so on and so forth. So yeah, so I think, I think you're right, but there is, if you will, where it's like maybe like Craftsman is like more distinctly American, right? Sort of than just as a broad generalization. And I think you're right. It's like in Europe, you just kind of see like the more finished, refined, smaller, just more smoothness everywhere. So yeah, no, I definitely see that. And I think that then if you do apply that broadly, is kind of what you're describing in office buildings, right? It's like there is kind of like, at least from an American point of view, there is a very like, oh, that's a European looking office building. Like when you're watching like Jason Bourne and he's running around Europe, you're like, oh yeah, that's a European office building. That's different than the stuff we have in the US.
Very crisp. I think you're evoking in my mind. So whenever there is a spy movie that involves British spy stuff, MI5 or 6 or whatever. I don't know the distinction between the two, but like whenever you have British spies, you can tell in movies there is a very early on stylistic choice they have to make. They're like, do we go with that the whole spy community is in these old like Victorian Georgian sort of like buildings where it's old and gentrified's not the right word, but like it's just very like, Sherlock Holmesy or whatever. Or do we go to the other extreme where it's all like crisp and glass and modernistic, right? And like, whereas like, I feel like there's a middle road where like sometimes in like, I think in American spy movies, the style is like, wow, they really had no budget for the office furniture. Like no matter how important the role they have is, it's just like crap, right? Like which I think probably matches the American spy agency aesthetic. Whereas like, what I encounter is that like, I'm thinking the later James Bond movies where like, it's very like well kept and put together and there's lots of glass around them. Everything's super clean and crisp versus like, going to visit, what is the guy? Not M, the other one. Who's the guy with the inventions? Your John Cleese guy?
A Q.
Yeah. Whereas you go down to his cave and it's just all dirty and it's just sort of like, oh, sorry, that's actually just my tea. That's not an explosive. But yeah, I need maybe the listeners can help out and find out what this design style is that I keep encountering.
All right, design style, like it. So let's see, that's 17 minutes. More importantly, did you get coffee in Luxembourg? What'd you do? Did you have to go? Did you go to Starbucks?
Yeah. I went down to the to the lobby and just to the little breakfast area.
No,
had some
no
coffee.
Starbucks action there.
No, there's Starbucks, but like it was far, and I didn't drive there, and I couldn't rent a car because it was all stick shift. One day I should learn how to drive stick shift. Whatever.
What?
It was
how far? Like it's not that far. I was looking at the map. I guess it's it's like a day trip thing.
It's like 2 or 3 hours to drive there. It'd be like going to Dallas or Houston.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like a lot more fancy, right? Oh, you went to Luxembourg. Going to Dallas is like, yeah, whatever. That doesn't matter.
I mean, it's like anything else in the first world. At the end of the day, it's just like, I don't know, it's another place.
All right. Well, if you are someone that's looking to secure your environment a little bit better, I would like everyone to go try Teleport, do some certificate-based authentication with your enterprise, and be safer. So, and of course, tell your friends that Software Defined Talk sent you. So, all right.
Let me go get a refill here. Just for myself.
I should have done a longer ad read for Teleport. I should,
I'm sorry.
While you're doing it. Yeah, go for it. This is the best streaming. Waiting for an empty room. And sometimes I wonder why we don't have more streamers. But nonetheless, I'm glad everyone's hanging here today. And hello from Spain. Is that Javier? Well, hello from the United States. And I think I misspelled Ola. I think Ola has the it has the wrong accent. It doesn't have the hat. It has like a proper accent. So my apologies for even writing Spanish incorrectly. Oh, NYC. Yeah. All right. Man, Datadog, Ryan. You guys are, there's so many jobs. I couldn't list them all. I'm just going to say Ryan has lots of jobs from Datadog. So yeah, all of you listening, if you want to work at Datadog, it sounds like Ryan's hiring everyone. Everyone, we're all going to work there at some point. So
that would be fun.
it's good though. We got Spain, we got New York City, and we got California represented in the chat today. So I think that's pretty good.
Well, now
if anybody's on from Asia Pacific, man, thank you. That's pretty. I guess it's pretty late or early. I don't know which, depending on how you want to think of it.
To answer another question from the chat, I think actually with the crowd that I was talking with, there were actually a lot of ruffled shirts, and even for people who spent a lot of time in Europe, I'm going to shock you. At a professional business meeting, there were several T-shirts.
Nice.
It was once I saw that, I was like,
no logo T-shirts there, or they kind of the black or
no.
The black white kind of like real fitted.
Yeah, most of the people in this meeting worked at banks or university stuff.
Oh, okay.
They were totally casual type of people. However, it was again, this is just a perspective from an American who sees this stuff. It is like it. There's a game you should start playing, Brandon, when you are talking with a gaggle of Europeans, and you have an American friend with you. You should be like, all right, quick, before you think about it, we've got 5 of our European friends over there. Let's do a bet. How many of them do you think own 1 or more motorcycles? And because like in this crowd, if you would have bet 80%, you would have won.
Really?
And so I think it's extremely common. I don't know outside of the tech world, but in the tech world, if you encounter a European person, chances are very high that they own at least 1 motorcycle.
Interesting. That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Which makes sense. Like it's given it makes sense as a hobby, right? Because it's something you can get outdoors with.
Yeah.
It's relatively cheap unless you're buying like a Harley or something, right? Like, I mean, a Harley's even expensive.
It's like any hobby. It could be cheap. It could be expensive, right?
Right. And then also you're given the opportunity to you can actually go interesting places. Well, that's the wrong way of putting it. You can go lots of very, varied places in Europe, and there's a whole culture of it. Whereas if you're like a motorcycle person in Austin, you're sort of like, we've made this joke several times, yeah, I mean, I've kind of gone everywhere I can. It's just I went to El Paso once, right? Whereas there's much more variety and things that you can do, and I don't know, but it's an interesting hobby.
All right, I'm gonna ask next time I'm in Europe. I'm gonna ask around about that. So
yeah, lots of motorcycling and sailing is what. Sorry,
sailing. That's another good one. All right, the baby's unhappy.
Yeah.
Well, we'll give the baby a chance to work it out. All right. I'm ready whenever you are.
All right. Well, I actually became friends with someone recently who works at Cerner, so I had the chance to talk with him a lot, which is fun. It was a nice person. I don't want to name them, but if they're listening, they know who they are. And I think Oracle has been buying Cerner, and I think that's closed. It's a done deal.
Yep, it's all done. I think it's $28 billion. Pretty big purchase there.
And I should also mention Cerner, longtime Pivotal, now VMware Tanzu customer. They I believe they use the Tanzu application service. They're happy with it, so that's great. However, as always, when it comes to acquisitions, I wanted to go over I think reading about acquisitions is always a fun, instructive thing to look at because I've worked in it and we all care about it. So first of all, there was some commentary about Cerner stuff that they're I guess he's the CTO that Larry, as it were, had, and I think it's interesting to think about in hopefully a non-cynical way, how acquiring people think about the way that the things they're acquiring. So Cerner is just in a hand-wavy way a medical records company, right? So I don't actually know how this works in other markets, but in the U.S., since healthcare is a very fragmented, non-centralized thing, I don't know. I mean, you probably still only have maybe 3 or 4 medical records vendors. You've got
if that, I think.
Is it Epicor? Who's the other one? You've got Cerner, and then
I think people say Epic, but I'll have to look up the official name. But I know you're talking about.
Yeah, and so you it's always funny when we think we have an open system, and then you're like, but there's really only 2 answers to your open question. So how open is that? But So it's just what you enter all your stuff into. And so one, I think the other reason this is interesting is it gets to the quandary that we often have on this, or that at least I often have in our coverage of the Oracle Cloud, which is like, I feel like when Oracle talks about cloud, what they more mean is like SaaS, right? Because they have a huge amount of legit SaaS applications. Now, I know they have some like actual infrastructure stuff, but it's always a little confusing about like, are they talking about their SaaS stuff or like AWS stuff? Like what does it mean to be an
And they bought a lot of business applications, which have become SaaSified if they weren't SaaSified, to your point, right? That's really what people think of today.
Right. And I think that's the other thing for people who are in the infrastructure space is like, it's easy to think about Oracle as Oracle database and programming stuff. Whereas like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like maybe at least half of Oracle's revenue is just from like ERP stuff, right? So it's a completely different like beast of a company than maybe we toss about in I know the IaaS Magic Quadrant has been retired for some inexplicable reason, but like
it was too useful. We liked it too much. They had to get rid of it. They're like, this is too useful. Get rid of it.
But so anyways, when you look at the Cerner acquisition, right? So you have a type of enterprise application in a gigantic industry, right? If only in North America. I don't know how they represent themselves abroad. But it's sort of like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Of course, Oracle would want to own that, right? Because they own these applications. And so it makes sense. I don't know, as I keep saying, I don't know enough to know if was this a good deal or how did the numbers all work out? Like when did you go to the head iBanker and like get him out of the hot tub? And by I mean
how to get to 28 billion, right? That's maybe the magic question.
I don't know what gender the iBaker identified with, doesn't matter, but they were definitely in the hot tub chilling, and someone was like, go, right?
Go get that done.
Yeah, and so...
But I feel like the deal was that talk about moats, right? Things that are highly differentiated, like, just the fact that we can kind of name all the ones. It's like, because I think if you've been in IT, like you eventually, encounter these systems because you have to integrate or do something with it. It's like Cerner or Epic, and you're like, okay, well, how hard could that be? Turns out incredibly hard. Anytime you want to integrate, do something with them, just anything, right? And it's like, so the fact, and then of course there's always this belief that like, oh, some startup is going to like disrupt the healthcare records industry, and that never happens. And it's like once somebody actually gets into it, they're like, wow, this is really complicated. So I don't know, I don't know what the run rate is. I don't know what kind of free cash flow Cerner throws off, but like I feel like it's going to be throwing off free cash flow for a long, long time. No hospital is throwing out Cerner.
Now that is a good point. I didn't really even consider is that it is a big moat around that industry, right? Now, so like seems like a good acquisition. There's probably some good synergies in effect there that would work out. However, what I found, I don't have it in front of me, but what I found, well, it seemed a little weird, but I think it was also a good M&A sociology study, is that there was a lot of talk from Larry Ellison about how now that they had Cerner, they were going to optimize all these things about medical records. That they have all this health information,
right?
And that doctors spend all their time doing this, that, and the other. And because now that they have this information, they're really going to go in there and like optimize the way that things are operating. And I feel like I'm trying not to be too like cynical about it, but like I don't think that's possible, right? Like it seems like it's one of these things where like if that was possible, it would have already happened. And I don't know what like synergies would exist that Oracle could impose that would like solve American healthcare, right? And
I don't know.
I think this is in contrast and also informed to like they probably would rather people forget. But do you remember a couple of years ago when Amazon, JPMC, and I think it was even Warren Buffett and his buddy,
they all said the same thing. So.
Yeah, we're like, here's a press release, and we're gonna solve American healthcare. And then I think a year later they were kind of like, fuck this shit, and they were like, out.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah, and so it does seem like maybe what I'm getting at is I think that, if they were refilming The Princess Bride today, instead of saying you should never start a land war in winter against Russia.
Right.
They would say like, and every Sicilian knows you should never try to solve American healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Well, to your point, I think that we need to add IBM, right? IBM just went through this entire process, right, where they sort of like had a bunch of aspirations, maybe not around healthcare records. I think that was part of it. That was a lot of on the other things, but I think IBM's made a run at it and they sort of got out of it. And I think Oracle's about to make a run at it. You said Amazon. So it definitely feels like it's one of these issues that like, and I think, when I read the Larry Ellison comments, I just sort of like, well, that's just sort of the veneer you throw on an acquisition. You're really going to do this because it's going to have great free cash flow forever. Like, like buying Siebel or some of these old systems that they acquired. It's like, yeah, these ERP systems are never going anywhere. These Salesforce automation systems, they never get thrown out, and we'll just kind of keep them under maintenance and we'll take some good free cash flow. But it's always nice, just put a little strategy around it, and like, and also we'll fix healthcare records, portability. But like everybody knows that's nearly impossible.
So now I think as a final point on this, how, using the equation you picked up from someone that valuation equals revenue times story. Do you think this is an effective story? Do you think it's good? Like how is it how's it going to play out? Like,
well, I think in this case, I'm going to say the 28 billion, although maybe it took place right before this recent downturn. So putting that aside, I think it's going to say it's fairly valued. I don't think anyone had Cerner in the high growth category, right? So they kind of have it in the perfect Oracle wheelhouse, which is kind of like Oracle. I think Oracle, of all the big companies, I think Oracle sort of acts mostly like a private equity firm. Like it's the most transparent, whereas like, I mean, that's bad and good. Like a lot of people get frustrated when their company gets bought by Oracle, but you kind of know what's going to happen and they seem pretty straightforward by it, versus other places that are always like, yeah, you're a strategic thing and we're going to grow you. But then you get there and it's like, that doesn't really work out. So I think in the case of this, it's like Oracle's like, well, we have all this cash and we want to continue to build up more and more cash in areas that are going to be highly defensible. Unlikely AWS or GCP or Azure is going to get involved here. And it is like a large, it's kind of like, if you want to think of it this way, it's just ERP for healthcare, which is an area that they're real familiar with. So you got to think to themselves, like, this makes a lot of sense for us to take our money and just throw this in here. And, no one's going to think of it. And it's just going to throw off a few $1 billion over the next X amount of years. And it's going to be a great acquisition. So I think smart by them.
I think that's like when I read up on it, I was like, yeah, it makes total sense. Like, good job. And you bring up a topic that maybe a year or two from now, if this podcast still exists, we should discuss the concept. Like, I'm very curious about this idea of a public company that is a private equity company. I think maybe that's like a thing. I guess we used to call that a holding company or a conglomerate company. I mean, I guess Berkshire Hathaway is, well, see, there's something that is like the Oracle model, where like you're publicly traded, but you're basically using a PE handbook on things, which like a Trilogy,
I think comes to mind, right? Kind of for those around Austin, they've just sort of they are 100% a private. I don't know if they're public, but they're 100% private equity, right?
Well, right, but that's the whole thing, is that you are a public company, but you use PE strategy and playbooks for doing things.
Well, we could probably think of a big one, but we won't talk about it today. Maybe a little close to home.
Sometime possibly in the future. We'll see how that goes. Well, so meantime, I mean, hopefully this will only be a reoccurring topic for, I don't know, maybe a year or so, because we always need content, but we don't want to like make it bad. As it seems like, as always, I mean, I think, we might have even given a name to this before, but I think we should just call it the maybe like the Brandon bias, named because you described it and discovered it, not because you have it, which is like, I think you've expressed this over the years well, which is like, everything's awesome when you're making lots of money. Right now, I know that's the halo effect, but I feel like you've developed this idea further, right? And for example, I feel like a data point in your theory is what we've been seeing tragically. And again, I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to be like, like fiddling during a fire, or sort of like, what's the German word? Schadenfreude or whatever.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah, because it is like, I think it's worth studying these things in order to avoid them and like help people out with them. But it appears that not only because of inflation or interest rates, and everyone knows that I'm completely befuddled by this, right? Like whenever it comes to like macroeconomic stuff, My feeling is just like, to channel Matt Iglesias, it's like, or could we decide not to do that? But that doesn't seem the way that things run. Maybe we can get Tyler Cowen in here and tell me why that's a bad idea. But it seems like as the crypto industry is losing value, the executives there are falling prey to the let me try another name, the Brandon trap, right? Which is to say, they've been propping up, and not, I shouldn't say they, but there are some of them who have been propping up this kind of bullshit approach to life and business. And it's been fine because they've been successful. But now all of a sudden, because there's not just an unlimited flow of money and valuation, it's sort of like, oh, right. You had to sell the drapes to your house, and now it looks like there's some fucked up shit going on back there. And now we talked about this as far as like the doing the thing where you've got like your like in Black Mirror, the reviews above your head,
right,
for real-time feedback.
Yep.
But it seems like further on, there's been several like letters from people and like all sorts of executives who have kind of hidden behind that curtain of success. And now we're discovering that like, ooh, maybe this the way they're operating is not cool.
No, 100%. I mean, I guess the article we're referring to here is Coinbase, and I don't know. At least at the moment, I feel like the CEO of Coinbase is sort of taking on the. It does seem like people sort of get associated with these moments, right? Like kind of the WeWork, and that they made the documentary about Adam Newman and stuff like that. And I feel like maybe we're headed that way for the Coinbase CEO. So I think we always have to like pull apart like several of these things. It's like, all right, so everybody kind of knew crypto was at a minimum a highly speculative world, that even the biggest crypto bulls always kind of said it's going to be volatile. They're going to be spikes, right? Things are going to happen. So I feel like that is just of anything in crypto. I think that was considered fact going into this. And so to your point, I mean, I guess, and the reason I put this in here, it is a little bit of halo effect. It's like, so, okay, so we had the CEO come out, create Coinbase. I think there's always a combination of luck and timing and intelligence. And I think, clearly that happened for Coinbase. They hit it all at the right time, and they've made, tremendous amount of money in the IPO. And now they're having this huge drawdown, which I think this is the part I think is very clear, which was very predictable, right? I don't think anybody knew when, but we could say to ourselves, it's possible this is going to happen, right? And to your point is now we're starting to see all of the, like, what it takes to lead a large company as a CEO is just a whole different skill set than it is to build out a crypto exchange. And the things that came out this week is like, and I'll just kind of list them off. It's just like, one, you got to manage perception, right? So it's like, you have this big IPO, you buy $100 million house in Los Angeles. Like, that's going to get reported, right? That's news to everyone. That's the kind of stuff we all want to see. And that's going to sort of set up an image of you that is, kind of like Silicon Valley-ish, right? Or from the TV show. And it's like, one, it's like, maybe hold off on buying that house for a few years until you've really got your company established, right? That would be my first thing. Two, as we talked about the real-time feedback, it's like, you can't espouse this culture of like, hey, we're a business. I want to hear good ideas. I want it direct. I want, and that's all I want to hear. And I don't want to hear a lot of back channel talk, right? And it's like, okay, well, if you're saying that, then it turns out like that in this case, the Coinbase people kind of came together and said, they wrote out a letter saying like these executives should go, and they outlined their reasons why. I have no idea if the reasons are valid or not. I just know that's what's going on. So then it was written anonymously. So as a leader, I think you would then internally think to yourselves, like, why did these people feel like they had to write it anonymously, right? Like, have I created a culture that maybe promotes the idea that you can't speak freely, even though I've said the opposite? Well,
right, exactly. That's incredibly ironic. That's fantastic.
And then his response, right, after telling people to basically air your grievances in private. I think he talked about praise in public, and then give bad reviews, and I don't know, however that saying goes. And but what did he do? He went to Twitter and wrote a long Twitter thread, basically calling out these employees for not, speaking directly and using their names, and then also saying that they should leave if they feel this way. Like, so inside that Twitter thread is probably the answer to like why people did this anonymously. It's like they feel like there would be retribution, right? So again, like if your culture is this very open, almost Bridgewater-esque, like, hey, like we can be super direct, but like we leave it at the door, right? We don't like, it doesn't carry over. I think, again, like you would think some of this would just spawn some kind of like inward thinking. Like, have I maybe, it's the old, like, I've said things that people have heard it, but people are really watching what I'm doing, not what I'm saying. So if I'm responding in public and kind of taking people down, maybe my employees are getting the indication that's the right communication mechanism rather than what I've told them to do, right? And so it just kind of goes on and on and on. And I just think to me, and then finally, I just think as an operator of any type of company, it's like, it really feels like Coinbase was like caught off guard that this big downturn could happen. It feels like they would have had contingency plans. Unfortunately, maybe we have to lay off 20% of our staff. Do we know how we're going to do that? Is shutting off everyone's email address the first way that someone should get notified, followed by an email to their personal account, inviting them to a meeting? Like, maybe we should think through, what does the process look like when we have to unfortunately offboard a whole bunch of people? Is this really what we want? Also, too, if we're worried about like the only way that we can protect the company is shut off access to everything for all of these employees, maybe we need to look more at our security posture. Like, what about people who are still part of the company that are potential insider threats? Have we taken the necessary security steps? So these are all like operating principles I think are probably fairly obvious. But like, in this case, I think the CEO of Coinbase is just failing at every level, right? And then it just, he just comes across like, guys, I always want to look at it like, hey, I'm sure he's under a tremendous amount of stress. Just because he makes lots of money doesn't mean he doesn't have any problems. I get that. I totally get it. But it does become harder and harder to like see the other side, or like even find this person remotely likable. Like, and I don't know. I've never met him. I don't know what he's really like. But all of these mistakes, I think, were at least foreseeable, and they're handling them poorly. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Kote?
Yeah, and there's also like there's another I don't even know what to call it, Bitcoin, crypto, what the fuck ever. There's another company that I hadn't heard of until all this stuff called Kraken, which is just like first of all, you should probably not name your company against a monster that tries to destroy humanity and civilization. Just like baseline, like hire some marketing people, right? Some kind of PR people to figure that out, but whatever, right? And I mean, over there, it seems like it's even worse, right? Like, and I think there's two things you're making me think, Brandon. One of them is yet another software-defined business model that I think we might want to pursue at some point. But the first one is like this kind of stuff when it comes up, like, I don't know. You probably get those emails about like, what are our core corporate values, and like,
Right.
we'd like you to go through the annual training to like, there's always some fanciful name for it that like, has some stuff. And like, I always am just like, I don't know, man, I want to do something else. But however, and at VMware, like they are hella into like their corporate culture and how cool it is and everything. And like, I have to admit, I roll my eyes at it sometimes, but when I see stuff like this, it makes me appreciate like how much time at the highest levels. I don't know what does that mean, highest levels? I think all the way probably up to the board, that they like, they actually care about their culture. And I've seen this at other organizations, and I see it reflected in like the way that people operate and what they say. And like, you don't really like appreciate that until you see kind of like the opposite of it somewhere, right? And so it is like, whenever an event like this happens, it's a good way of reminding yourself of like, right, it's really important to not be an asshat, right? Like, and you should try to like embody that in the way that you as an individual and you as an organization operate. And so I think that like, one, it's a good opportunity to try to turn a frown upside down. Like, as this thing kind of plays out, all the DevOps and SRE or whatever it's called nowadays, there's some great cultural studies to come in here, right? Because like, I feel like a lot of the cultural commentary we've had in the DevOps world, it doesn't quite have as good use cases of this, of like, what does it actually mean to have a toxic culture, right?
Yeah.
Like how does it negatively affect things? Like, obviously you don't want burnout and people killing themselves and stuff like that. So that's terrible, right? But like, there's something like even more about what culture means. And like, we can identify good cultures, right? But it's also very important to identify what a bad culture is and how it leads to things. So there's some good case studies. Hopefully we'll see some HBR articles, maybe MIT Sloan. I don't know what they do over here, Amsterdam School of Business. Maybe they'll write something up, but that would be good. Now, secondarily, I think a new business model we might want to pursue, Brandon, is why don't you call us up and like kind of send that email to us first, right? So this is the first level of stuff. Is like, we're not a PR agency, right? But we're also not kind of like a Machiavellian like tech libertarian like person who is just sort of like looking to optimize what you type into the keyboard based on like your valuation. We're not into that. We just kind of want to be like, maybe you should just like change your Twitter password for 48 hours and give it to someone that you trust and just cool off for a little bit, right? Like, I know you're a super smart person. You got stuff to say, but just take a moment, right? Like, just give yourself some time. And like, and then the other part of that is like, here's what we've gathered. This would be like the presentation that I would give, is that like, so, let me convince you of that a little bit, or just bring you into this story. And here are 5 easy to identify things, words that you will find yourself saying that means you should just take a moment. And one of them, and I think in the Kraken thing, you identified one of them, which is, if you don't like working here, you should leave. And it should be like, listen, if you find yourself thinking that, take a moment, right? like there has never been a case where someone says that and it turns out well. Now, I know maybe you're like 26 or maybe even 52, but trust me, if that phrase comes up, that's a big tell that something is going wrong. You don't want that, right? And then another one is sort of like, as you were saying, if you have your employees writing anonymous letters, slow down, like recognize that something's happening. So I feel like we could offer a service that sort of like, just take a moment, right? Here's like 5 key phrases that are going to come up. That means that like, go get a lunch, take a trip, ski,
and
do
if
something.
I could, I'd like to, in the slide deck we're preparing, I'd like to just, coin like a little phrase and just say, there's the privilege of power, right? And I think in both of these cases of the CEO of Coinbase, as well as, Elon Musk, you could say like, here's what's going on, right? It's like, you have won this incredible power, and it's the power of privilege, where you have made so much money and had so much success that you can do almost anything, because no one in the company or even outside the company, there can be very limited ways that they can control you. So if you decide to do something, you're going to be able to do it, whereas most other people don't have that. And you can even explain to them why. It's like, in the case of Tesla, it's like, Elon Musk, you made the counterintuitive bet that like, now was the time for cool electric vehicles. No one really believed in you. You believed in it. You're now the world's most wealthiest man, or at least was for a short period of time. But remember, like, that was just one decision. It doesn't mean because that decision was right that this is always going to play out, right? Every time you feel like people don't get you, you can't always call upon that. And the same thing with Brian Armstrong here as the CEO of Coinbase. Like, you believed in crypto when other people didn't. You built this great exchange when other people didn't. And just because you made that decision doesn't mean all your other decisions are going to be right around culture, right? And that's what you have to tell these people, say like that. But this is giving you this power of privilege, right? So you can say and do whatever you want because you've made these huge bets, and people aren't going to really check you. Whereas, lower level employees aren't going to tweet because they would be fired if they were to say certain things that get tweeted out, right? If they told people like, if you don't like it, quit. That's not something that even middle managers or even vice presidents, for the most part, are going to get away with for very long in companies. So that's sort of, I think, the thing that both these, these people that have achieved a success miss, right? And I think that's really what we're seeing. And they kind of let it play out in the public. And I don't think, to your point, it's like, I bet you they do have really smart HR people providing consultations about, here's what we should do and here's how we should handle it. And I'm sure Brian Armstrong was like, I'm sure he was just like, in this case, like every other human being, I'm sure he feels like, here I've created this incredibly valuable company, and I'm sure, and he thinks of in the first person, and I've helped you all make millions, potentially billions of dollars, and you're gonna leak an anonymous memo about this to other people and take me down. Like, I'm sure what happened in that case, like, he was very frustrated and angered by it. We would all feel that way. And he went right to Twitter, and he didn't have any, use that power of privilege, wrote that out. And I think he probably said a bunch of stuff that's not, that even if he believes it, it's not going to help him achieve his goals. So That's the biggest thing. And I just, as I see it over and over, and I think maybe we should just, kind of like wrap the segment with thinking about, like, as an employee though, I do think, there are limited, as while I watch all these people writing anonymous memos and like calling on, they want to like have Elon Musk and they want to have town hall and asking all these questions. It's like, I think the answer for most people at companies, like, all the answers already, right? these people are very powerful. They're going to probably do what they want to do. If you feel better, it really helps you speaking out publicly and trying to make changes. You can just know that's a real uphill battle. And I think somebody in the Slack asked this question this week, like, would you work at a company that basically you didn't like the CEO? And it's like the answer. And I think somebody else in the Slack kind of just said like, well, it depends on how much they pay me. And I think that's really the reality is like, you at the person at a company like this, you just got to decide like what's best for you. And I think spend your energy there. Like, how much money am I making? How do I like the team that I work on? Are the people I work with day to day good? Do I think the things we're doing on in the company good? And not, if you will, get so tied up in the larger part of it, because you're going to have a very minimal effect on changing that. Even if the CEO stands at the table and says like, send me emails, tell me what's wrong, I want to change the things. It's like, reality is that's really, really difficult. So I think as you go forward, I think maybe just a version of this whole segment is like, just take care of yourself, like be aware of what's going on, but really maybe in the end, just take care of yourself.
Yeah. I think two things to close it out. One, to emphasize it, everyone who to the executives out there who really embrace and are genuine to like being nice culture wise, or just being normal, as my wife always reminds me I should say these things. Fantastic. I appreciate it. Keep doing it. And then two, I'm thinking in our new business model, Brandon, like I want to run the experiments through it, right? But the thing that we're going to do is so we identify when this is happening. We've got that key phrase, like once you have the thought or you utter the thought, if you don't like it, you don't have to work here. That immediately triggers this response, right? It's almost like I don't know how like CISOs work, but I feel like there's some sort of triggering mechanism that just kicks off the mechanisms, right? And so that's like getting a CVE is posted. It's like 0 day. If you don't like it, you don't have to work.
Maybe Twitter should just 24-hour time you out. Like once you type it in, it's like, oh, we saw you're about to tweet this, 24-hour timeout.
Right. And I feel like the path that happens then, right? Like we're not going to put a bag over your head and put you in a van, but it's sort of like it's your fiduciary responsibility now to enter into the software defined talk. Don't be an asshat program. And I think what we're going to do at the retreat is we're going to sit people down, and in order to graduate from the retreat, you have to watch all of the seasons, all of the episodes, plus the movie of Hilda, and explain why this is a good show. And like what we want to see is that you're kind of empathizing with what's going on here, the environment. Like we really want you to like get into the universe and kind of understand like what's happening here and why this is comforting. And like if you can somehow sort of like transform yourself and realize that like, oh, this is the world that I should be building. Like this is kind of like, this is a nice place where everyone is happy. I think then maybe we'll consider returning you back to your executive status, and you might be certified that you're not an asshat. Is what we might do there. Now, Brandon, you'll have to work on how much we charge for that. I think it's going to be a lot of money.
It's going to be a lot of money, but it won't be a very long PowerPoint.
Now, this is not my department pricing. I think that's what you do, but I want to suggest that maybe to show our commitment in the language that someone like this will understand, is that they will be forced to give us at least a single-digit amount of equity in the company that they run, because then we have, as they would say, skin in the game. Now,
in the game. That's right. We're incentivized the right way.
What they're going to understand after going through our program is that no one would like to have skin in the game because they would like to keep their skin, right? Like that is a bad metaphor on its own. However, when we're pitching it to them, we will use that phraseology because we know how they're thinking.
We'll rid you of that metaphor. I like it. That's very good.
Right. Yeah. So also, I didn't get a chance to read all of this, but it looks like Google's introducing some new changes to calendaring, Brandon, which I know you're always on top of calendaring. So how is what's going on with Google?
I mean, there's two things I will just touch on briefly in the world of productivity software, which I'm always looking, because like, I don't know, like all of us, I use it. I'm always trying to I don't know what's better. So one, Google's just basically making calendar invites, cleaner and simpler to read. So it's basically easy to see when something has changed, why it's changed, and the dates, which, in itself is like, you think to yourself like, well, wow, that's just simple. Why would that be a big deal? But it's like, I feel like calendaring is like, it's never really good, right? Even that applies to all of them, like not anything else. So the fact that somebody's just trying to like fix the small problems, like, hey, can I see what time the meeting is and when it's changed? I think that was good to know. So I'm glad to see the people over at Google are at least thinking about it. And then this other one I thought was funny, written by a self-proclaimed millennial about like why the f um, does anyone enjoy using Outlook? And it was just a nice little missive about uh, really someone kind of going from Gmail to Outlook. And I guess, I kind of forget this. The millennials have really grown up with Gmail is their, first introduction to email. So when they see Outlook, it's just like all crazy to them. Whereas like, I think like it would be like me and you saying it's like Pine. Remember like Pine, the email reader a long day? Like our first interactions were these other things. And I'm sure a bunch of people, when they got Outlook, they're like, I like Pine better or whatever the Unix ones we were using back at the time. But I thought like, at the end, it was just sort of like a kind of funny thing about, and she says, quote, but my love affair with Gmail is really about comfort and comfort. And basically she goes on to say, and I just think it was really interesting about like, she answers her own question. It's like, this is just another version of like every generation going through this. Like you just like what you know, right? You just always like what you know and you like what you have. And all of us don't want to change. So it's like, Outlook, I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? It's just what the corporate world has adopted. And all of the people that sort of like don't want to think about productivity software, they just learned Outlook and they don't ever want to learn anything else again. And that's just going to be how it is. Right. And so I thought that was funny too, just to see kind of like, I'm just using this author because she says she's a millennial. It's like, no, the millennials, they're all going through the same thing. And it's like, my message back is like, I don't know, just learn the productivity software they make you use, get as good at it as you can. And, when you're at home, you can try other stuff, but don't spend a lot of time thinking about why they use Outlook. Just get good at using Outlook is my whole point.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like, when I read through that, it made me reflect that I have gone back and forth between like using Gmail full time and then using Gmail plus Outlook. And at this point, they both look kind of dirty, right? Like I think that, so I like the Outlook mobile app. I haven't checked out the Gmail like iOS app in a long time, but for a long time back when it was, what was it before they acquired Javier's company? Aptio or something? Like, I remember I started using that app a long, long time ago. And I always liked the way that the what's now the Outlook mobile app worked. Like, it makes sense to me. But, like, yeah, they're both kind of like, the Gmail interface on the web is really, like, weird. It's almost anachronistic in the way that it works. However, like, it's very effective. Like, it is kind of, like, magical. The way that it works. Like when I search for stuff in my corporate Outlook, it's just like boggling how unhelpful it is.
It just doesn't work, right?
And it does seem like, I mean, I guess to be positive is the wrong word, but to be understanding, like, I guess that's a hard problem to solve. Like if Microsoft can't solve it, then, whew, boy, searching your email, difficult. But it really is like, whatever they're doing over there on the mobile app to search for email is like, it often takes a lot longer than it would in Gmail to search for things.
But I think you kind of hit on there like a whole thing about like it's a hard problem to solve, and I think in I'm gonna call it like the traditional corporate environment, because I bet you most people listening to this use Mac or probably maybe some use Linux or some combination of it, but really most people are using Windows. Most people are using Outlook and Office, and most people consider the problem solved. Even if and I think that's kind of like what it's sitting on here. It's like, that's like the vast majority of office workers. That's what they know. That's what they like. And nobody wants to learn another again, in the broad kind of enterprise world, people don't want to learn new operating systems. They don't want to learn new productivity software. I mean, even Windows, who tries to just, when they move the kind of the menu bar from like the left to the center, right? It's like, I mean, it's just, people just freak out. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just to know where you are on the spectrum. It's like, you're listening to this, you're probably interested in playing with lots of productivity software. Certainly we like to talk about it and do it, but like, hey, this has solved problems for most people. And that's why there isn't a ton. It's what someone called it, like unopinionated software. It's like Excel. It's like, is Excel the best data analysis tool? No, not at all. But it's just sort of like, lets people do what they want to do. No one wants to learn anything new. Anything that you would try to create is almost nearly impossible at this point to disrupt Excel, Outlook, and Office. And it's like, so to me, it's like, just learn the systems and just move on.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, the headline is like, who enjoys using Outlook? And it's sort of like, well, no one enjoys using their work email. Like, that's not really like, it's
not the point, right?
Yeah, the content in there is not really, which is not to be all like old guy doing whatever, but it's like, yeah. It is worth reflecting that, like, I think it is, I guess pun intended, I do pine for using Gmail. I always like that the best. I think it is kind of the best interface for doing email stuff. But Outlook does, maybe I never got comfortable with the way that like, I don't know what they call it now, G Suite, Google Apps, whatever. I never trusted the way that it does scheduling. It always seemed like it wasn't going to work, which probably I should have trusted it. But if I did trust the way that it did scheduling, I think it would have been a replacement, because I very much so, and this is just our generation, I guess, but I trust the Outlook way of doing stuff.
Right. Well, I think but I think you're speaking for an entire industry. It's like Gmail calendaring is always, just what you said, it never gives you that feeling that it's really right. Outlook calendaring is great. Say what you will, don't like it, be unhappy with it.
Yeah.
It works great. Nobody misses an Outlook meeting, right? I mean, if you're not there, it's because you chose not to be there. People miss Gmail invites all the time. And that's like, again, it's just sort of like, it's a boring thing that just works, but everyone needs it. And, once people get used to it, they're never changing.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the third part of the show, the Gartner Magic Quadrant for, was it observability? I haven't looked at it yet. Was out, and I think there was much celebration in our community that Honeycomb showed up in the upper right quadrant. Brandon,
yeah, the leader in the leader quadrant, as they say.
They just got over the edges there, and they're in
just
there.
Barely, but it doesn't matter when you write the blog post. A leader is a leader.
I mean, no one's going to go in there with a pixel ruler and start to evaluate like where they are relative to other stuff. So first of all, congratulations. It's been many years, a lot of work put into that, and I think it panned out. And I just want to say, you should celebrate this. Like it's totally cool to be in the Magic Quadrant. It doesn't invalidate any sort of like coolness or work that you're doing. It's good stuff. So hopefully over the next whatever FY they're in, I don't know how they do it if they match their FY to their CY. So I don't know if we're on a 24, a 23, or a 18. But like I think it's the field marketing people over there, having a party. So
they've already bought the redistribution rights. The blog post has been written. The newsletters are going out. But I
think as one of our Honeycomb friends said in the community, it's very easy to get a copy of this report. So
yes, it is. Well, I do think, longtime friends of the show, Ryan and former sponsor, although they won't come back as a current sponsor, still will mention them. Datadog, still the big dog on the chart. I guess they don't ever, like all Gartner Magic Quadrants, they never want to have a true leader. So they place Datadog and Dynatrace like so close together. It's like, well, one is a little bit higher on completeness of vision and one is higher on execution. So, but I think execution is the more important vector. So I always think when I'm like actually scoring it, I'm like, well, if it's kind of a tie, but you're leading in the execution, you win. So I'm going to declare in the first ever software defined talk, as we interpret a Magic Quadrant, Datadog was the true leader. They won it. They're number one. Although you can't do that. Gartner would never let you pick rankings. I'm going to certify them number one ranking in this Magic Quadrant. Yeah. And I'm sorry, Dynatrace, unless you email us and buy ads, we won't change it. We won't change it at all. So, but I'm sure you did very well too, because you're the solid number two.
And I want to just throw this out there to any Gartner people listening. I mean, I know they love it when people suggest how to rejigger the Magic Quadrant. But I think there is a let's call it the maybe the close Magic Quadrant, like more practical Magic Quadrant. I think there should be another Magic Quadrant that collapses together execution and vision, right? Because I think basically what vision is saying is that if I buy this thing today, it's not going to be obsolete in 2 to 3 years, right? Like that's what I mean. Vision is kind of representative of like they've got some great ideas, right? Now, I often have great ideas and I don't execute on them, and so therefore they are bullshit and useless, right? Like great ideas are not great unless they result in something. But I would like to see a Magic Quadrant that is based on let's collapse together execution and vision, and then the other vertical is cost and just price, right? Yeah. Because I feel like as a buyer, you're like, so would I like someone who can execute well? Yes. Would I like someone that has good vision? Yes, I don't need to hesitate for either of those. Would I like to pay a lot for that muffler? No. Right. And so like all you really want to know that like I just
value.
Want
you're basically saying value. Like what's the value I'm going to get?
Right. And then, whatever. I know all the objections and ways you could do it, but like really maybe what they should do is you can use a bubble chart to have three axes on a thing, so they could stick with the Magic Quadrant. And the bubble they should have is the larger the bubble, the more expensive it is.
Yeah, well, that's the old, Forrester has that, and the Wave. They've got the 2 dimensions and then the size of the bubble. So you can kind of steal from that a little bit. I like it on value, but make that third thing value. I like it. Oh.
Yeah, that would be great. Just straight.
And then, hey, since we did it, I think we should just do it. I don't have the ruler out, but I'm going to do the top 5 then. This is how I actually interpret this Magic Quadrant. So I already mentioned it. Number 1, Datadog. Number 2, Dynatrace. New Relic, clearly number 3. They're kind of in a little area by themselves, so there's no doubt about that. Then Honeycomb, which is behind in completeness of vision, but higher in execution. So again, I rate execution higher. So there are 4, rounding out the top 5 would then be IBM, which is really Astana. So to me, I think that's how everyone reads these charts, but actually be interested if anyone, they should either email us or put something in the Slack. Tell me if you think completeness of vision should be rated higher, because that's just what I do. I just kind of do my own little factor. I'm like, okay, execution is a 1, and then maybe completeness of vision is like a 0.75, right? You don't get quite as much credit for that. So that's the top 5.
That it'd be a fun for any of our listeners. A fun weekend project would be like do some pixel counting, where you can send it a screenshot of any Magic Quadrant, and it'll do a ranking based on the
and I think you should just put in the factors, like be like, I rate execution this, and I rate completeness of vision this, and then that would just give you a linear ranking, right?
Right. I mean, basically, you want to take that screenshot and convert the position of the center of the dot into an XY coordinate, and then stick that in.
This is finally some type of artificial intelligence machine learning project I can get behind. Someone needs to figure that out. That would be great.
It will come as no surprise that when I did corporate strategy, I dreamed of that application almost daily, right? That you could take a chart that someone had not put numbers on and basically calculate what the numbers were based off of that chart. That would have been so handy. Maybe Apple will have that in there. Well, do we have any bureaucracy this week, Brandon?
We do. We've got a bunch of things happening this week. So first, I want to thank, I think Jesus wrote what I think is the perfect STT comment. It was a correction about your I don't know, some of your liberal arts discussion last week about, I guess you said, who was it? Who killed Julius Caesar? It was Mark Antony, but it's actually Brutus. This is comment. I won't read the whole thing because it's long, but it was actually just perfect. It was a great correction. It was very thorough comments. It was very thorough. It's the only kind of comment that will find its way into the software defined talk community, or comes from the software defined talk community. So you should join the Slack and check that out. We mentioned Datadog before. I guess, I just look at this. I made them number 1 in my own Magic Quadrant, and Ryan says they're hiring. There's so many jobs he posts, I can't post them all. So go into the Slack, go into the jobs channel. I don't know. Pretty much if you do anything related to tech, Datadog has a job for you. And find Ryan, and he'll tell you about it. And then finally, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everyone that has been participating into the Software Defined Talk thread. If you're a new listener, this is what happened. Somebody started a thread. Actually, it was Matt Ray 2 years ago. And then the thread just kept going. So now the thread, as of this week, has gone over 7,000 messages in the Slack. So it's been there for 2 years. Of course, because we're on the free Slack, you can only go back and read so many. So some of the thread messages are secretly archived away. So I don't even know how to describe it. The thread is sort of like a loose general channel that covers all topics at this point. So to all of the people that have commented in the threads, congratulations on 7,000. And more importantly, congratulations to Slack for supporting this. This is obviously a ridiculous use case. They should probably just turn it off and not let us keep doing it, but it keeps working. So great job, Slack. Great job for supporting over 7,000 messages in one thread. I really appreciate it.
It's a community in a thread. That's what's going on there. Well, I don't know if Brandon will do the editing to fix it, but some people can hear there's a lot of commotion in the background. So I got to get to my kids. So I'm going to cut off the conference section to be shorter. I'm only going to highlight 3 things. One, next week, Matt Ray is going to be in town for the FinOps X conference, June 20th and 21st in Austin. I said in town. I didn't mean Amsterdam. I meant Austin. So, you could go check that out. Now, also, this is the week after next. I'm sorry, right? No, it is next week. Also next week, I'm doing a great job here. Finally, we're having one of the conferences I spend a lot of time and I care a lot about, the second annual one of it, DevOps Loop. which if you go to devopsloop.io, you can register and attend for free. I spent a lot of time talking with many of the speakers about what they want to talk about. And we had some brainstorming sessions, and I'm really looking forward to a lot of the talks that they have. It's totally free. You can register for it. It's coming up on Wednesday. So just go to devopsloop.com and, you should attend it. And then also the call for papers for Spring One platform, I think closes on June 28th. I was just thinking I should probably submit a paper to that, even though I often select a lot of talks, so I might be able to just go into a spreadsheet and insert my talk in there, but I would never do that. I need to officially submit a talk and go through there. But that's going to be December 6th and 8th in San Francisco at the Moscone West. But you should really check out that conference. It'll probably be quite fun this year. But with that, Brandon, what do you recommend this week?
I think it's a quick plug for stickers. If anyone wants a new laptop sticker, in fact, I put some on some water bottles I just got. This is what you need to do. Just send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. And my recommendation this week, I don't know if it's controversial, but I think you probably already know about it if you care about it. It's like I went and saw Top Gun Maverick. I love the first Top Gun. I love Top Gun Maverick. And I'll say of all the movies that sort of were made, if you will, when I was much younger that are being remade, this was probably the best one, right? Like the Matrix sequel, it was all right. Some of the other ones I don't like as much. And I thought to myself, why do I like this movie so much? And I just came to the conclusion that nostalgia is basically like time travel. If you saw music, movies that you saw at a certain age in your life, a certain time of your life, and then when they're well done, it just takes you right back. You just feel like you're, in my case, much younger version of myself with, if you will, all my education and things ahead of me. And I was also fun because I got to watch it with my son, who really didn't really care for the first Top Gun and didn't watch it that much, but he really liked this one. So it was kind of fun. It was like, hey, I loved this when I was about his age, and now he loves this. So, I know Tom Cruise is crazy. I know there's lots of problems with the movie, but I loved it. So if you are the type of person, you've already seen it. If this movie was important to you, you've already seen it. But if for some reason you're on the fence, go check it out.
Yeah, I have to imagine if you were a prepubescent kid and you watched the first Top Gun, you'd be like, why are they spending so much time on this volleyball scene? What is going on here? I don't understand.
I don't understand. It's kind of a waste. Yeah.
Well, my recommendation is a pre-recommendation, but I'm so excited about it. So I discovered, I don't know, when I was in a bookstore in the King's Cross station, or St. Pancras, or it's not Pancras, I forget how to say it, in London. I saw in a bookstore, there's this game called Dungeons and Dragons, The Adventure Begins. And it's this board game. And it's a very simplified version of D&D to start playing with kids, to kind of introduce them to the ideas. And we just got it. I haven't played it yet, but my daughter Alejandra she's so excited about playing it that she's going to be disappointed we don't have time for it tonight. But I've read through the rules. I even watched about a fourth of a video of some people playing through it. And I think it almost is going to be the perfect, it's not quite a Dragonwood level of simplicity if you know that card game. It's just a little bit more complicated, and I think it's going to work out well. So I'm looking forward to it. And if you haven't heard of it, you should check it out, because I think it might be the key for the demographic of the young kids there. So I'll report back once we played it a few times and see if my optimism pays off. So speaking of optimism paying off, you've been very optimistic to listen this far and come to the end of yet another episode of the SoftwareDefinedTalk.com podcast. Now, this is episode 363. So if you wanted to see show notes of things that we mentioned, the recommendations, all the conferences I recommended, and the ones that I did not, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/363 and find those links. You can also look at the headers there, find out how to join our Slack community, which is great. There's all sorts of stuff happening throughout the week. I almost feel like I can follow the tech industry now because all of our community sort of puts interesting things in there. But yeah, just go to softwaredefinedtalk.com or, listen to the next episode where you've already subscribed to this one. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
All right, well done, Cote. You made it through the crying children. So I think it sounded good. I didn't hear it too much. We'll see. We'll see what we can do in the post-production. You
got to leave it in there for flavor.
That's right.
That's what these people playtesting this board game kept saying is oh, that's some flavor. So that must be some term of art. in
I
the
like
role
that. I'm
playing
gonna start
community.
using that, like
It's
for my
flavor.
mistakes. Oh, that's just a little flavor. That's just a little extra flavor.
Yeah, it's like when you roast some vegetables or some meat, like you don't determine the perfect places where it's black versus cooked. It's the flavor. Like that randomness is whatever.
All right, I lost track of the. Did we answer any questions in the Slack or in the stream here? Let's see. Outlook was in enterprise. Yep. Okay, I think we got everything. Yeah, browser app notifications never work for me. I agree. That's true. That's exactly why people miss
Oh
Gmail
yeah,
meetings.
yeah.
That's probably that example.
I
That's maybe
I,
the entire feature is like you can't really notify
I
well
should
in
have
a
mentioned
browser.
this, but I think there's a generational cutoff where you trust a GUI more than you trust a web page.
Yeah, it's
And
like a
so
little
if it's
it's like a
important, you
client
want a
server
GUI.
bias, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I like
Ooh,
client server here. I
client.
can't,
Let's
this
put
I
that
can't
in the
and
mood board.
this Ajax HTTPS callback. I don't know. Does it really work? Is it really going to call me? Yeah. If I close the browser,
Ajax.
will it remember me? It's that whole thing.
Yeah.
Google Wave and Ajax. Those were some good times. The first time you saw it, you're like, this is pretty impressive. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then it's like, it doesn't really work that well. It's like, it's kind of inconsistent a lot. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Google Wave.
Just more stuff. That's
more stuff. All right, streamers, thanks to everyone watching. It looked like we're almost at 100 followers on Twitch. I think we're at 99. So I appreciate everybody that's watched the Twitch stream or followed us. It's been fantastic. It's fun to do it this way. It's always good to get some real-time feedback from everyone. So Kote, any final words before we shut it down for the week?
Nope.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone watching. And we'll be back at some arbitrary Thursday time next week. So we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.